Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are here to celebrate the official launch of the Wise Leader. Before I do all the prep and introductions, hi, Uli.
Hey, Michaela, good to see you.
Oh,
What a
good to see
day.
you. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on like LinkedIn, right? What a cool and crazy world that you and I can meet each other, not just on Zoom, but we can meet each other on a digital professional platform. What a thing, right?
Amazing.
Well, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're tuning in. Whether you're watching this live or you're catching up with us afterwards, just a little bit of introduction. My name is Michaela O'Donnell. I'm the executive director of the Max Dupree Center for Leadership at Fuller Seminary. If you have never heard of the Dupree Center for Leadership or Fuller Seminary, let me tell you briefly about it and then why we're here today. So, the Fuller Seminary is a Christian seminary that has historically trained pastors to be pastors. About 25 years ago, really people with a lot of foresight and creativity started to wonder, what about the folks who might never come to seminary? How might theological education benefit them? And out of this, a bunch of different centers came up. And the Max Dupree Center for Leadership is interesting because our primary focus is not church leaders. We're about and we're interested in the formation of leaders across industries and seasons of life. We are very welcoming to church leaders, but our primary focus is, you might say, the folks in the pews. So we do lots of non-degreed training, everything from books like we're going to talk about today to classes to cohorts, and we're trying to help you grow in your faith, think about how to integrate your faith in your work, and ultimately to seek the very best for the people and systems entrusted to your care. Okay. And today we're here with Uli Chi. Uli he has had a long and fruitful and faithful career in the software industry and entrepreneur, really interesting stuff. I feel like it's almost been a second career that you've been engaged in being a board chair for lots of higher education institutions, currently the board chair of a large healthcare system in the Pacific Northwest here in the United States. And you've been a Dupree Center advisory board member for over 20 years. You know more about this place than I do for sure, and that many other people do as well. And as a part of the Dupree Center and your advisory role, you also write for our daily devotion called Life for Leaders, and you teach with me in our Doctorate of Global Leadership program. But all of that is just prelude because you're here today as an author.
Yes,
We
first time.
Yes. First time author, the wise leader. Let's see if I can get it to show up well on this virtual
Cool.
background. Uli, this is a big day. You wrote a book.
Amazing. I mean, amazing to me. Perhaps to everyone else too, but yeah. No,
Uh, how
yeah.
you feeling today? How you feeling this morning?
Well, it's just an amazing thing. I think I feel very excited. I think I feel, saying my wife Gail, that it's a combination of being really excited and a bit nervous. It feels a bit like when I started my own business, that you do all this work and preparing and getting things ready, and then you finally open the doors, and you hope people show up and and benefit from what you've created. And but it's just wonderful to be able to celebrate this day with you and with so many others who hopefully are watching this. I guess the other thing I would feel really deeply is a sense of gratitude. As an author, and Michaela, you're an author, and in many ways, it's a solitary thing. You go write your book, in your wherever you write books in your office or whatever. But the reality is, there's so many people who are part of the journey. There's so
Yeah.
many folks have been encouraging to me and have supported me in this process. And many business colleagues who've been cheering me on, and folks that I've worked with in the nonprofits that I've served in, and those places where I've taught, whether at Regent or Seattle Pacific, and obviously, of course, at Fuller. So I feel a deep sense of gratitude this morning.
I will just say I love that you get to add that. And of course, I'm teaching at Fuller part at the very end there because we have you teaching in the doctorate of global leadership. And yet, Uli, you've always been somebody who talks about the community of people that are around you. So it makes sense that you're feeling their presence, our presence with you today. But you mentioned something that sort of leads to my next questions. And we're just gonna ask a couple questions and sort of celebrate Uli, and then we'll kind of be on our way. But you said it's like starting a business, and you said it's like opening the doors to a shop. And I know you as an entrepreneur, a person who creates in light of the needs that you see in the world, right? So I'm
Right.
curious, why did you write this book?
Yeah. That's a great question. I've I've been asked that. I've sometimes asked that of myself, why am I writing this book? But I think, the truth is leadership is really hard, right? I mean, we've
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you know that. I'm a bit more a coach on the sidelines than I'm in the thick of the action, like some folks like you and others. And, I've watched how hard it is. The truth is, we've just come through a pandemic and people are fragile, leaders are fragile. In the healthcare world that I currently live in, so many folks have sort of thrown in the towel, not just doctors and nurses, but people who are just doing administrative leadership. It's just a hard time.
Mm,
And the world's gotten a lot more complicated. So I think my hope is that, there's ancient wisdom that I talk about in the book that really provides hope to lead well and with wisdom and to lead with meaning and purpose. I think oftentimes it feels chaotic. It's difficult. How do I navigate this? How do I contribute to the flourishing of the world rather than sort of its destruction? And, leadership, we see lots of examples of really bad leadership, and unfortunately in the world. And so I think people are wondering, how do we do this? And so my hope is that that's one of the things that motivated me. I think there are some really helpful, insightful things that ancient wisdom that in the scriptures that provide us with ways to navigate differently than we often see in the world. So that's one. I think the other is not just for younger folks, but for folks in my season of life. It's a chance to, as we talk about the depression, the third of life, where you reflect back on your own work and life, and it's a chance to connect the dots. The book, I think there are many folks in my season of life who are wondering about their legacy. What have we learned from our experience? How do we pass wisdom on to another generation? And my hope is the book will encourage, inspire, and maybe my hope is that it'll provide a framework for folks to think about how to pass on that legacy. So those are the two, I think, main reasons that I wrote the book.
little commentary on the second one. We're actually hosting a webinar in June, which you can find out about on Dupree.org, that's really about nurturing that intergenerational wisdom, both the passing on, but also the receiving in new ways, right? Sort of
Mm,
this, it's been one of the things I've loved so much about our relationship, Uli, is I think we trade wisdom, right? I think I get
absolutely.
more from you than I give back, but I think there's a trading there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I've watched you model, and so I sort of feel comfortable saying that. On the first thing that you said, I just want to highlight that. I myself and leaders I talk to every week are in any number of complex moments in which decisions are required, and you do not have all the information you wish you had. You just don't. And things are moving fast, and you've got to decide anyway. And what I love about the wise leader and about your call to wisdom is in those moments to be able to go back to the Christian scriptures and say, we're actually part of something that's way bigger than ourselves. And it's been going on way longer than us. And though the complexity of this moment and this situation feels like no, there's no answers and it's so ambiguous, and how am I going to wade my way through? That kind of murkiness has been something people have been dealing with for the ages, and that God has something to say in light of that. And I think you capture that really well by taking us back to the scriptures. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Good thing this is recorded, right?
Yes, right.
So my last question for you, and this is a question, I ask quite personally. Like you said, I also write books as part of my work, and so I know sometimes you can sort of write and you feel like you're sending something out into the void. You're like, is this gonna like, I heard this, this, and this, and then I went and wrote this and I put it out there. And you really need those human interactions to help
Mm.
calibrate how people are receiving it, what the value is, which is sometimes different than you set it out to be. Sometimes it's like, oh, people find this valuable, and I thought it was going to be this. So I'm curious. You've sent the book out to a lot of early readers. You started to get endorsers, folks like that. People obviously who are for you, but even for
Mm.
amongst the people that are for you, I'm curious about what your favorite feedback has been so far.
Mm. Wow, that's a great question. And I just came off. I did a podcast with Mark Labberton, the
Nice.
recently retired president of Fuller, and he was one of the things he said is, I really need to read this book several times.
Mhm.
And there's a sense in which, there's uh, the, the reality is that the book itself has a lot of parts to it. It's not really a how-to book in terms of, here are the three secrets of being wise, but it's a framework for helping people sort of engage with the, the ancient wisdom that the scriptures embody. And I think my hope is that, and as Mark said, that there's a lot in there that as someone else said, the book needs to be digested like a good meal, right? That
Mm.
there's lots there. It's not fast food. It's something to ponder. And I've had and Mark said it. I've heard others say it. This is something I really want to go back and read several times. C.S. Lewis used to say, a great book ought to be read more than once. And I
Mm.
hope that's the kind of book this is. I hope that is the case. We'll see. But that's one of the feedbacks that I found really encouraging. The other that was interesting to me was a lot of folks have focused on the middle chapters of the book that talk about power and humility.
Yeah.
And I think for leaders, I've that seems to have really struck a chord because I think folks really do wrestle with how do you exercise power well, right? I mean, power is part of leadership. I think my experience is that oftentimes people think of sort of two extremes. Either they fall in love with power, or they sort of say, well, I don't want to have power because it's not a good thing or whatever. And I think the challenge of actually being wise in leadership is knowing how to hold power well.
Yeah.
And so I'm really encouraged by that feedback. And same thing about humility. I think humility is not being a pushover or being a doormat. And can you actually be humble? And can you exercise humility in the real world and be an effective leader?
Yeah.
And a number of folks have commented on that. And so that was really encouraging.
Yeah, power and humility are very critical topics. I also think they're, to borrow a phrase from you, one of the ways in which Christian leaders can show up in distinctly Christian ways. I think that our scriptures do provide wisdom about how to do that. I've heard you say before, and I can't remember if this is in the book or not, but the goal is, and it's something that rings true in my own head, how do you steward power well, organizationally speaking, without abdicating responsibility?
Mm.
That rings true. And so if that rings true with you, listener, viewer, I would really encourage you to pick up this book, The Wise Leader, certainly available at all of your favorite bookstores. We at Dupree.org, we've got a landing page with some more information. Uli's got a conversation guide coming out that's sort of like kind of a companion piece that comes to this. Like I said, we're going to be doing a webinar focused on nurturing intergenerational wisdom in June. And yeah, so just sort of play along. And fast forwarding to the fall, Uli's going to start having and hosting some conversations with wise leaders. All of that to say, tune in to Dupree Center for all things Uli Chi and the Wise Leader. And I just want to name for us sort of the moment this is. I think, and I might be speaking out of turn here. So if I am, then somebody can correct me, and I'll be glad to be corrected. But in the history and legacy of the Dupree Center, we haven't always done as good of job at platforming the books and the thought leadership of marketplace leaders. Sometimes we do that in a purely academic sense. And so to be able to offer this book and promote this book to our audience and say, not only is Uli academically sound, not only does he do theological reflection in rich and valuable ways that you can sort of apply on a Tuesday morning, but he's been there. He's been there in real tough and complex moments, having to make wise decisions and operate a business with wisdom. That really means a lot. So Uli, I want to say thank you to you for joining me here on LinkedIn. By the way, follow the Dupree Center on LinkedIn. There's one more thing I'll ask you to do. But Uli, thanks for meeting me here on LinkedIn today to celebrate the launch of your first book.
Well, thank you, Michaela, and it's a great honor to be in this kind of a setting, to have the privilege of introducing like something like that with you. And I just want to say thank you for the partnership of the Dupree Center, for you and so many others of your team who've been great partners in bringing something like this to life. I couldn't have done it without you, so I'm deeply grateful.
You're welcome. And I want to say a special shout out to Raven, who sort of has been making all the things happen. So if you've seen Uli's book on socials, if you're enjoying this in LinkedIn right now, it's because of Raven. So thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you for joining the larger conversation on how to lead and work in a distinctly Christian way here at the Dupree Center. And we will see you next time.